Now, I will show you in just a minute why we need it, but it is important to capture that information. The next object, the lines on the diagram show the path that the output object takes to get to the next task. Now, if your plan is to improve this process, it is important for you to identify how the object travels the next element we'll discuss is the path. The next element to discuss is the path. The lines on the diagram show the path that the output objects take to get from one task to another. If your plan is to improve this process, it is important for you to identify how the object travels and how long it takes. For example, this object can be hand-carried, can be mailed, or FedExed, or sent electronically, or any number of other ways to move the object between tasks. You can see that these methods would have widely differing transit times. The final element we will discuss is the application or computer system used in executing the process. With a wide variety of technology available everywhere these days, it is important for a business to maximize the use of technology to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your business activities and processes. A process model is great for doing this. In our model, we will capture the name of the system or application in the task element, as I previously mentioned. We will also capture what the application does in the support of each task. For example, here is an application called the loan processing system. And when the loan officer executes the prepare loan package task, he uses the loan processing system to execute it. So there are two activities that occur and should be captured. The first is what the loan officer does in preparing for and using the system, and the second is what the system does to support the loan officer in execution of the task. So that's a summary of process model elements. Now let's discuss how a process model has power to improve your business. There are at least 4 benefits you can get other than just defining the process. First, the process model can be a proxy for the elapsed time. In other words, by finding out and compiling how much each task takes in the process, first, the process model can be a proxy for the elapsed time. In other words, by finding out and compiling how much time each task in the process takes to execute, you can get an estimate for the elapsed time from the starting point to the end point in the process. So if this is the current state model, then you know how approximately. So if this is the current state model, then you know approximately how long this process segment takes to execute and can compare this with some of your measurements that your company has taken. This is a powerful use of a process model that can help you start analyzing how the This is a powerful use of a process model that can help you start analyzing how the elapsed time can be reduced. Now, here is an interesting rule of thumb. In all the processes I have done, I have found that I can predict what percentage of time is spent executing the task in this process. Here is an interesting rule of thumb that you can use. In all of the processes I've done, I have found that I can predict what percentage of time is spent executing the task in this process compared to the elapsed time of the process. That's not right. In all of the processes I've done, I have found that I can predict what percentage of time is spent executing the tasks in this process compared to the elapsed time of the process. That percentage runs no higher than 5 or maybe 10% of the total time that the process takes. In other words, there is a lot of time that processes In other words, there is a lot of time that the process is not being executed. That was brought out in the Michael Hammer book, The Agenda. In other words, there is a lot of time that the tasks in this process are not being executed. That was brought out in Michael Hammer's book, The Agenda, when IBM was in the computer business. They only leased computers to their customers. Then there was a lawsuit and a judgment. Then there was a lawsuit and a judgment that said they had to sell their computers. Then there was a lawsuit and the judgment said that they had to sell computers, not just lease them. So IBM consented to do that. They then got into the credit business and decided to hold the paper for their customers buying their computers. Then they found out that their competitors were winning the business because IBM's process took too long. It actually took about 2 weeks from the time the customer applied for the loan until they could deliver an agreement. Several of the IBM people in the process thought it really can't take that long. So they hand-carried the paperwork through all the steps and found that the total time they actually worked on the agreement in the 2-week process was 1.5 hours. In other words, the resource they spent preparing the actual agreement was only 90 minutes out of 80 hours of elapsed time. That's less than 2%. With a process model, you can estimate that the amount of time that you actually spend working on one instance of this process, you can estimate with a process model, you can estimate that the amount of time with a process model, you can estimate the amount of time that you actually spent working on one instance of this process. You can show that